All right, what's going on, fam? It's Catch You, Cosmo. I'm very excited today because I have an amazing guest with a stellar story that's going to inspire you guys and be able to change the landmark of your life. I actually known his brother for a very long time, Noah Martel, but his story is amazing. He has managed with his wife to eradicate $120,000 of debt within 2 years, and he's going to share basically how. So everyone, please welcome Marc Mortel. Appreciate it, brother.
All right, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I mean, I want it to be completely about your story, man. We can start from the very beginning. Actually start right now. Like, what do you do right now? What's your story? What kind of things you do with your, free time, and what are you into?
Yeah, so professionally, I work in software. I'm a project manager. Outside of the corporate, I'm always trying to leave a legacy that expands beyond the 9 to 5. So I love doing stuff like this. I volunteer at just various places, just trying to get my story out and share it. So.
And I mean, your story is super inspiring, so we definitely want to get into that. But I think, over previous conversations, we always want to start like how you got to that point. So could you tell us about your upbringing, basically like the beginning of the story, and just like how that also influences you now?
Okay, so for sure, one story that kind of was a pivotal moment in my life was growing up in A-Leaf. It's not exactly the safest place.
Right.
It has a little notoriety there, but so my mom or my parents really sought to put me and my brother in private school. So to do that, they had to work a lot. My mom took 3 jobs. My dad worked like 12 hours a day, etc. So what that did is it brought my mom home late most nights. So I remember one time, it was one summer, we were off from school, and me and my brothers were just hanging out in the room. 2:30 in the morning, I hear screaming, and when something like that happens, it just doesn't register right away. But after a few seconds, I'm like, oh wait, that's my mom. So I run out the front door, and I see her just kind of like, on the ground, just crying, saying they took my purse. She had been.
How old were you?
I was probably in high school. Yeah. So, I remember just seeing her on the ground, looking up and seeing a guy running off. And then come to find out, she had been held up at gunpoint right at the front door of our house. So when you see somebody that close to you having to suffer like that, and it's because she's having to work so hard to kind of put you on a trajectory where you're trying to change the scenario.
I mean, so it was late at night. We said like 10, 11. Do you remember?
2:30 in the morning.
2:30.
Yeah, and she just got home from work. Yeah.
I almost want to just stop there and process that.
Yeah.
So I mean, what did that do to you? Like, what were the internal dialogues you had from that moment going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of anger inside. Because being dealt the cards that I'm dealt. That other people may not have to go through those types of scenarios, but then also it's like an action. Like, I have to do something. This is not okay.
Right.
So yeah, those two things just combined, kind of set the path towards where I am today.
Right. And then of course anger, and also grew up in a Christian household.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So talk about the anger, and also, okay, there's God there too. Like, how did you reconcile the two? Or were you even ready to reconcile the two at that time?
I think just growing up in the Christian household, when you bring that situation and combine those two, it reminded me like God has given us another chance. The situation could have landed much differently. She may not. She could have not been here today, but she was. We were blessed that she was still here. She wasn't hurt. Just kind of brought that to perspective, and gave me gratitude even in the midst of that hardship, that we're still okay.
So there was anger, but then there was also, okay, so at least we still have my mom, things like, okay, cool. Okay. So fast forward, I mean, unless there were any other scenarios like that, like how did that play into basically this $120,000 scenario over 2 years. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So went to Baylor University, Sick
Okay.
and Bears. But we always say, me and my brother always joke that Baylor, their school colors are green and gold for a reason.
Okay.
It's expensive. So,
That's good.
but you have two types of students that go to Baylor. You have the extremely affluent and wealthy,
Wow.
and then you have the students who are basically like on student loans, like a lot of student loans. And I was the person on student loans. So me and my wife met at Baylor, both had $60,000 of debt, graduated, got married a few years after, and so now we have $120,000 of debt.
When was this?
I graduated 2011, she graduated 2012.
Okay, and then okay, and you got married when? What was it?
2014.
2014. Okay, all right. So yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so her story, she has a similar background to mine, where she came from a single parent home, didn't have money, like food stamps, that whole situation. So we both had a desire, a combined and unified desire to go on this path together. And so so that's kind of, we had a whole bunch of conversations like about finances in our story before marriage, and once we got married, it's like, okay, it's time to put this plan into action.
Were there any programs or things you watched around that time to help you along the journey?
We went to a financial freedom course at Sagemont Baptist Church.
Okay.
It was not a Dave Ramsey course, but it was something that
I had
was
my opinions. another reel or something like that.
Yeah. It was something that was created. The curriculum was created by the pastor of that church, and
Wow.
so we pursued that. But I have listened to Dave Ramsey as well. But I kind of create my own. Everybody has their own.
Because I think with that, like, it's a philosophy. Like, you have certain things that are gonna work for certain people, then they're not gonna work for you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay.
So
yeah.
so for me, I we still traveled while we were on this debt-free journey. So every year we took an international trip, and we were still able to do that while being heading down this path of debt freedom. So
Okay. Talk about, because I'm also interested in the feelings and the experiences. Then, because I think that connects us with people who are in similar scenarios. Like, there are people who are probably going to be watching this who it feels horrible to feel like you can't do everything, to kind of feel almost stuck. So can you talk about some of those conversations? Like, what was the mood like talking with your wife? Like, did you feel a burden, or was it just like, hey, I know how to do this, is going to be easy? Like, how did it go?
Yeah, so I remember, like, as a man, especially, you're trying to keep everything together. You're trying to keep the ship above water, but you deep down, that you're drowning in debt, and that it's putting you on you starting out from the bottom, right? So
Sorry, I just thought about a Drake song, started from the bottom.
Yeah, now I'm here.
Don't let me stop.
So I remember one time, just so happened that I was in a restaurant by myself during lunch break, and I had run into a guy that he was one of the guys that my mom had babysat his kids, and I just remember that was kind of a low point because because of our financial situation, right, and because of where I knew I wanted to be. I was so far from that.
Okay, so he reminded you, like, what do you?
So I'd been to their house growing up, big, huge, enormous house.
Right.
So
I understand. Okay.
yeah.
Right.
So it
A white guy, black guy,
White
Hispanic
guy.
guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, I think he was Hispanic. Maybe probably a melting pot. Yeah. So but yeah, he had a huge house that I remember, and so I remember going up to him and kind of asking him, like, hey, can you, I don't even remember what I said to him, to be quite honest, but I remember kind of asking him, like, what did he do to get where he is?
Okay.
And I remember, it's funny because the answer that I was looking for was like maybe like a handout, right? That was kind of what I was expecting, is like, hey, maybe this guy can help my mom, with a job or some situation.
Right.
But he ended up bringing me to lunch and just talking finances with me. And so one of the things that stuck out to me is that in that conversation, he told me basically save your money, like that live under your means and save your money. And it was like mind blowing because I'd always assumed you had to have this prestigious title and everything to get to where he was.
So it's basically comes down to the 10. It's not how much money you make, it's what you do.
Exactly.
With money and learning how to save. Okay. So you saw that as basically a path going forward. And then talk about, okay, so once you got that, like once you were done with that conversation, how did you feel about that? What were your thoughts about that?
It inspired me, to be honest, because I think beyond all of the classes and resources that you see online, just having somebody firsthand who you know is living a life of generational wealth, hearing that it's that simple,
right?
You know, it's like, okay, I can do this, right? And so had conversations with my wife, really that story, and you know that set us off on this path.
Okay, talk about the progress. Like, what were the milestones? Like,
So we did anything and everything we could to stay on track and inspired because going through the journey, it's self-sacrifice, right? So I remember putting a post.
That's not easy. The whole self-sacrifice part. Like, I mean, okay. So what did you use to like basically inspire yourself?
So we one of the things we did is I drew like a thermometer on a big poster board.
Awesome.
Stuck it on our fridge so that it was in our front of our face every single day where we were and how far we were from this journey. Every time we got any additional income, bonuses, even like a $50 gift from a family like member for birthdays, whatever, anything we got went straight towards that.
Wow.
Lived off of one income. So my wife, when she graduated and started working, all of her finances went straight towards debt while mine supported the bills. Yeah. So that was advice I had gotten a long time ago from a coworker and took it to heart.
This is gold.
Still do it to this day. So.
I was on a financial coach training, and similar story. Basically, it was a very affluent white woman, and she said basically, you live off of one of the spouse's income, and you save the rest, or do it, or invest the rest, and that's kind of the key. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So you're making progress, and like any challenges along that journey?
Yeah, I mean, challenges came up when, you know, me, for example, I'm in an apartment for 6 years, and you see everybody around you buying houses, right? Okay. So
you're on your journey. Basically, this is almost like this. Let's stay in my lane. But also, you're seeing like what said, okay, the comparison trap started happening.
Exactly.
So how did you quell some of those comparison thoughts?
Really, like a lot of those conversations came up with me and my wife. Like, are we doing the right thing? You know, should we?
That's good.
Are we being too aggressive? Are we being unrealistic with our expectations? And but you know, the fact that I knew that we were still like I could see the progress, right? Even though it was slow and steady progress.
Was she always on board?
Not always, and I wasn't always on board either. You know, like there were times when I wanted to go have a nicer meal, do things like that, and you know, it's progress. Like you don't have to have. I think Denzel said in one of his Equalizer movies, progress, not perfection, right? So
we're gonna talk another inspirational video after this, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So you know, kind of like when you're lifting weights and stuff, you know, as long as you're getting in there, you don't always have to have the best workout.
Right.
But just the fact that you're in there making progress, it's you're getting towards that goal. So same situation.
Okay. So talk about the victory moment.
Yeah, the victory moment. I just remember when we paid that final payment. You know, seeing it say paid in full. Man, like when I tell you I celebrated inside and outside. I actually, it's funny because I was doing a lot of like talks and stuff at the time, so I made a video, you know, where I did the announcement and created an ebook and everything and posted it online just to share and inspire others that like you can do this too. So yeah, you guys out there, I mean, I don't care what background you come from, whether it's, struggling, whether you're affluent, wealthy, you can do it. Like whatever income, there's a way, God will be there with you.
Oh my God, I feel it's so heavy. So that's good. That's good. Any other words for the audience as they? I know you kind of talked about they can do everything with God. All things are possible. Anything else you want them to think about?
So one key takeaway, and this is not something that's talked a lot about, especially in churches and things like that, is a lot of, you'll find in church a lot of people preach on with to be blessed you have to give, right? When you give, and I'm not against that.
I understand. I see where you're going. Please
However,
continue.
what is littered throughout Scripture is obedience leads to blessing, right? When you're obedient, you'll be blessed. If you're disobedient, you'll be basically cursed, right? And when I read those verses, it's God's promise to us that if we live a life where we're pure, like all those closet sins and things like that, you gotta get those out of your life, because when you are living a life that is pleasing to the Lord, He will bless you, especially on journeys like this. I mean, it's gonna be more than beyond what you can even think of or imagine. So.
All right, cool. So how can people find you now, and how people connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Tag is at Marc, MARCM, and 0516.
Okay, awesome.
So, yeah,
and I'll put that on the screen as well. I want you guys to connect with Marc. We need to make sure these stories are common, and also we can share the mindset. One of the big things he talked about was having that conversation, basically promulgated his journey towards financial freedom and financial success. So, and these are the kind of conversations we want to have. So definitely check him out. And if you have any other questions, please let me know. I want to make sure this kind of stuff is common. All right. So thanks again, Marc. I appreciate it, brother.
all right, appreciate it.
We'll see you guys next time.